I was telling a friend of mine last night that I had a dream. And in this dream there was a lot of old gentlemen, old ho-chunks. And they were all speaking, and it became this one old gentleman's time to tell a story. You know, I learned this story from my grandfather, and the way that my grandfather tells the story is the way that I tell it. But this guy was older, much older. And he started telling the story, and I could follow it. But he used words that I haven't heard. I've never heard. I inferred the meaning from the way he used it in the story. And I went and talked to my brother about it, my brothers. And we sat there and we talked about those words. It didn't ring a bell with any of us, you know, so I went back to the story and I told the story, and then I used that word. You know, and I go back and I'd say, okay, and this is where he used this word, and I'd use that word again, and we said that, you know, your inference is probably correct, what you think that it means. I think that's what it means too, but I don't know what it means. I've never, you know. It was a good dream.
Ho-Chunk History was funded in part by Irene Danielle Kress, Francis A. and Georgia F. Ahrens Fund of the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region, Evu Foundation, Ron and Patty Anderson, Ira and Aneva Riley Baldwin Wisconsin Idea Endowment, National Endowment for the Humanities, and Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.
Ege hichakaro ni na ni karagit. Hira peres shanak e mahi hin guided. Go ho chungi jawa onak. He choke hara. Wank inikige he guided. Go he anchara. Mashtamani he guided. Ho chungo winek. Warin peres ji. Wajan hin guided shunok. You know me well. My name is Andy Thundercloud. I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk tribe. My grandfather told me that we were always great people. He said that we were always respected by the tribes that surrounded us. And he said some of that respect even ran to fear, you know, because we were supposedly a very fierce, proud people, you know, that protected what we considered to be ours. The land that we considered to be home ran from, I guess, North Michigan, or the Northern Peninsula, as far as Chicago, you know, because Chicago has a Ho-Chunk name, and then from there it ran to the west, the Mississippi, and then from there we back up north again. What we considered to be our land, you know, that we were given the responsibility of, what should I say, maintaining it. You know, as it should be, and that was, you know, created for us. The creatures that we saw here, that we had here, were created for us. You know, as well as, you know, these trees, this grass, the water, everything was created for us, and they're all considered to be sacred by us. And we do our best to maintain that the relationship that we have with them. When we are going to use a tree for whatever purpose, we offer tobacco and a prayer, you know, that we're going to, you know, be taking this tree and we're going to be using it, you know, for a certain purpose. Same is true if we were going out to gather medicine. You know, I was sitting here looking around earlier and I was kind of going, you know, I wonder what kind of medicine is around here. You know, my grandfather used to take me out to gather medicines. And he would tell me, well, this medicine is used for this, and this medicine is used for that, and you can use it for this, and do it for that. And that he said that each time that we harvested some of that, you know, that we offered tobacco that we were going to be using this for a purpose, to make our people stronger, make our people well. But from what I gather from my history, grandfather said that we were traveling people. We've traveled throughout the continental United States. There have been stories of, I guess these are recent stories that, recent is, if you take a look at it, consider colonial times, back in the 1700s as being recent. There were stories of groups of our individuals that would travel east. It took them a long time to get to their destination, and the destination didn't have a Ho-Chunk name, so it was referred to as Boston. They went there to trade. They took their objects that they were going to trade, and they traded for knives and metal objects, and once they traded, then they started their journey back. And from what I understand, that journey would often take 2 years, a year to get there and a year to get back. But I think the thing I distinctly remember my grandfather telling me is that, to the west of us is the great river, the Mississippi. And at one time there was a large number of us that went down the Mississippi and came to where the Missouri River and the Mississippi River come together. I guess that would be the area of St. Louis. And we settled there. For whatever reason, there was some younger members of the tribe that became disgruntled, and they moved off to the west. And a little bit south of there were others that became disgruntled and went up the Missouri River, settled in there, and some of them even went further up the Missouri River and settled up in the Dakota area. I've been told that many of the tribes that currently exist in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, even Oklahoma, are all originally Ho-Chunks. In fact, he told me a story. Sometimes during the 1800s, there was a large gathering of Indians in Omaha. I think there was the Ponkas, the Otos, the Missouris, the Iowa, the Omahas, and some Sioux. There was a gentleman that came from the east, and this anthropologist asked these other tribes, where you reside now, have you always resided there, or did you come from somewhere else? And each of them says, no, we came from Mokashuch. Mokashuch translates to Red Bank, the Green Bay area. I guess I could say our Garden of Eden, because that's where we were created. So the Winnebago Ho-Chunk people, we were known as Winnebago at one time. I don't remember what tribe gave us that name, but it was anglicized to Winnebago. To us, we've always been Ho-Chunk. Winnebago is a foreign name to me. I grew up with my grandfather. My grandfather raised me until I went to school. And during that time, I never spoke English. In fact, I distinctly remember the first time I saw a white person. I must have been 4 years old. And this white person came to the house asking for my grandfather. And I remember being a little bit astounded because he was a little white guy. Just a little fringe of hair around here, but he spoke Ho-Chunk, and that confused me. So after he left, I asked Grandpa, I said, Grandpa, who is that man? What family does he come from? What clan does he belong to? And Grandpa just laughed. He just laughed, and he thought it was funny. And he told me that they belonged to a race that we call migrated, big knives. And that there were a lot of them in the world. And the world, as we knew it, was pretty much governed by what they did. And he said that I'd have to get used to it. He said, because you're going to run into them in your lifetime. A couple years later, when I started school, I found out what he was talking about. I started school, I wasn't able to speak any English at all. And I think that I did well because I never was held up in any grades. Graduated 8th grade on time, graduated high school on time. I wish I could say the same thing about college, but I can't say that. But I did finally finish. And I'm a member of the Thunder Clan, and that's where our chiefs come from. And my grandfather always told me to conduct myself, as such. He told me that we were the chiefs, he said, but never to say that, never to come right out and use that as a way of being authoritative. He said that I don't do that because the way of the chief is hard. He said it's a very difficult life. And he said that I'm not capable of doing that. So therefore, I don't call myself chief. We are divided into 12 clans. There are 8 clans that belong here on Earth, and there's 4 clans that belong up above. And in the past, each clan had a certain responsibility within the tribe to ensure that everything went well. They each had a certain area, that they lived in. They took their responsibilities to heart, and they did them well. You can take a look at it as each being different departments, maybe the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, and those kind of things. But that's the way the tribe was. Our modern government is more structured after, what everyone does. We've got a president, we've got a legislature, so we've got the executive branch, we've got the judicial branch, we've got the legislative branch. Elections every 4 years, and to elect our legislators and elect our president. The president appoints heads of the various departments that we have within the tribe. Clans were created eons, thousands of years ago, through our origin stories. Those clans still exist today, but since we are not a central cohesive unit, until we come together for ceremonies, then those clan responsibilities kick in. Like I said, we of the Thunder Clan were the chiefs. It was our responsibility to see to the well-being of our people. If somebody came to us and said, I don't have a home, we'd immediately abandon what we were living in and said, here's your new home. Or if somebody come to us and said, we haven't been able to procure any food, and that's all we had to do, is then we'd give them food and sustenance and whatever. And I think that's what grandfather was talking about when he said it was difficult. It's like in modern day times, if you were to come up to me and said, Andy, I don't have a car. And if I was a true chief, I'd reach in my pocket and say, here's your car. I'm a Thunder Clan because my father was a Thunder Clan. We follow our father's lineage, although our mother's lineage plays a lot into it too. I've tried to explain our relationships, and I said it's simple. My father, all my father's brothers are my fathers. Hence, all their children are my brothers and sisters. Okay, all my mother's sisters are my mothers. Hence, all their children are my brothers and sisters. Now, my mother's brothers are my uncles, and my father's sisters are my aunts. I have a nephew now that's, this is funny, okay. His father is my uncle, but his mother is my sister. Okay, so on his mother's side, I'm his uncle, but on his father's side, he's my uncle, so we're nephews to one another. And that's the way we address one another. It's a unique relationship. My grandfather always said that, I should be proud of who I am and where I've come from. And he often told me stories about the Ho-Chunk people. He's told me stories about how large our tribe was at one time, without even giving me any numbers. But I'm assuming that we ran into the tens of thousands. I don't know. He told me that we were created here. I don't care, what anthropologists have said. I firmly believe that, this is where we were created, and this is where we live. This is where we have lived. This is where we will continue to live as time goes on. Grandfather told me many stories. He said the coming of the white man changed a lot, because he often told me that these white people think that they know something. He said, but they don't. But because of the, the technology they had, or the knowledge that they had, we were forced to live in their style. Our relocation program that they had for us, we were moved to the West, forcibly removed to the West, and stories about when the federal troops got back, the Ho-Chunks would be here waiting. There was a story about an old man who was well over 100 years old. His name was Yellow Thunder, and he was removed. And by the time the troops came back, he was sitting there waiting for them, and whatever. And those stories go on. I don't know how many times believe we were moved to Minnesota, northern Minnesota, then southern Minnesota. And then from there, we were moved to Crow Creek area in South Dakota. They didn't like it. It wasn't our home, and they grew very disgruntled, and some of them went down the Missouri River and settled among the Omahas, and sometimes in the past, we acquired half of their reservation. So therefore, we have a reservation in Nebraska. Here in the state of Wisconsin, we don't have a reservation. We do have land that belongs to the Ho-Chunk, and I don't know what that amount of land is. There are certain members, that are just bound and determined that, that we need to get that land and whatever. And they've asked me what I thought. I'm a member of the Elder Council, which is made up of elders from each of the clans, like we were set up at one time. And people come to us for advice. And I told them, all of this is sacred. That's what I've learned. I have no say-so about what happens here on the ground. That's Bear Clan responsibility. My responsibility is higher than that. They always call me one of those uppity Thunder Clan people. And it's jokingly referred to, but I'd like to think that we're apolitical, but we're not. Because we have a lot of authority, just because of being an elder. I guess that's just kind of a brief history, from what I've heard. Grandpa could sit for hours and talk to me and tell me stories, and believe it or not, I could sit and listen to him, because it was, it always amazed me. I guess we take a look at it and we think about it, and it was just like a book, a book that your mother, father, or grandmother, or grandmother, grandfather would be reading to you, because it was so interesting. It just had my rapt, as raptly intent on listening to what he said. Because I remember even going to bed at night and he'd be talking, and I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up in the morning and he'd be talking again, and I used to wonder, think to myself, did he talk all night and I missed something? But I think the things that were of import, he told me many times. The same with my father. My father would tell me things, and then someplace down the line again, he'd tell me again. And I never told him, you already told me that. I would just sit and listen to them and nod, and they'd ask me if I understood, and even though I didn't understand, I'd say yes. I've told them to my children and my grandchildren exactly what my grandfather told me and exactly what my father told me. I blend history. I talk about our society. I talk about culture, just like I was sitting here talking about the trees and the grass and the earth itself, the water, and the relationship that we have with them. Each of what we see here has a story, and that's part of our creation story. But it's many stories, that follow the main line. There's the main stories, but there's many other little additions to it, so that even after all these years, I don't think I know it all yet. But there's things that my grandfather has told me, that I don't understand. Even to this day, I don't understand. But occasionally, I might see something, I might experience something, I might hear something, and then a little bell goes off in my head. Ding! That's what Grandpa was talking about. I said, no, and I have to think about it. It might puzzle me. That causes me some puzzlement. And doing things like that, or hearing things like that, and believing things like that, it makes us who we are. People often talk about culture, and I say culture is something very, very difficult to teach. I hope that's what I'm doing with my children, my grandchildren, and the younger people that come to me seeking advice or seeking a story. I hope that I'm making them, understand who we are. I want them to be proud, who they are, and who we are, because I'm very, very proud that we still exist. That we still have our language, we still have our religions that we practice. We just finished off a week-long ceremony here last week. We started Monday and we finished Sunday. And I think I'm recovered from it. Our ceremonies are, they're religious. Just like any religion that we have is supposed to carry over into everyday things. And that's the way our ceremonies are. The ceremony that we just finished is we initiated a new member into our medicine lodge. And in doing so, we're praying, for a long, fruitful, productive life for him in the path that he's taking, the path that he's going to be on. And I guess we spent the entire week telling him about the road that he's going to travel now, and the ways that he to conduct himself, and those kind of things, and the understanding and the love that he should have for his fellow humans. We're going to always be here. Whether we're going to be here in Ho-Chunk name only, or whether we're going to be here as Ho-Chunks. Our language is what makes us who we are and what we are. Again, this relates back to a story. My grandfather said that we were given this language by Ma'una, God, and as such that it's sacred. Our language to us is sacred. That we should treat it that way, and that we should use it that way. And then he said that one of these days, this language is going to be gone. And when the language is gone, that's the end of the world. And I guess when I was younger, I used to think about, the modern things, what they think about in Christianity, the apocalypse, the great fires, great storm, whatever else. And I thought it was completely the physical end of the world and whatever. But as time has gone along, it's one of those occasions, like I said, oh, that's what Grandpa meant. I see us becoming, for lack of a better word, I see us becoming more and more white as we lose our language, and I see that among many of the tribes that I've gone to. As they lose their language, they become more Europeanized, I guess would be, anglicized or whatever. And I see that's what he meant. What we knew, what our grandparents knew, what our great-grandparents knew, what they followed, it's going to be gone. That's why language is important to me, and it's very, very important to me, because I don't want to see us lose the beautiful life, that we have, that I've known. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see my children lose that. I don't want to see my grandchildren lose that. My great-grandchildren lose that. I believe it's important, and I do my best to maintain our language. In July, I was giving the responsibility of taking a new apprentice and teaching him our language, and I think he's doing very well. I think that in a matter of time, he's going to be an excellent speaker.